Have you ever felt like your prayers are simply messages sent into an empty void, with no certainty they're even being received? Like God's voice is muffled by layers of noise, doubt, and distraction in your daily life? What if I told you that the greatest spiritual misunderstanding of our time isn't about God's willingness to speak, but about where we're positioning ourselves to listen? This fundamental misconception has kept countless sincere believers trapped in a cycle of spiritual frustration, constantly straining to hear a distant voice when the divine is whispering directly from within. Has this ever happened to you? You face a crisis, perhaps a health scare, financial trouble, or relationship conflict, and immediately begin praying intensely, begging God for guidance, yet feeling that his voice remains frustratingly silent or unclear. You're not alone. This experience is nearly universal because we've been taught to look in the wrong direction entirely. We've learned to perceive God as existing somewhere out there, beyond the clouds, beyond our reach, beyond our immediate experience. But what if the veil between you and God's voice isn't nearly as thick as you've been led to believe? The revolutionary understanding I'm about to share with you today transforms not just your prayer life, but every aspect of your spiritual journey. The kingdom of heaven, that divine reality where God's voice speaks clearly, is not a distant realm waiting for us after death or accessible only to spiritual elites. It is, as Scripture profoundly reveals, a state of consciousness that exists within you at this very moment. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might fundamentally change your entire relationship with prayer, spiritual guidance, and divine communication. When you truly grasp that hearing God's voice isn't something you need to strain for, but rather recognize as already present within the very essence of your being, your spiritual practice transforms from desperate pleading to joyful communion. Imagine waking each morning with an innate awareness of divine guidance flowing naturally through your consciousness. Picture approaching challenges not with anxiety about making the right decision, but with a quiet confidence in the still, small voice that never stops speaking within you. This isn't wishful thinking or esoteric mysticism. It's practical spirituality that produces tangible transformation in your discernment, decision-making, and spiritual sensitivity. The 5 daily shifts we'll explore today have helped countless believers move from spiritual static to crystal clear divine communication. These aren't complicated techniques requiring years of theological training. They're simple adjustments in how you position your consciousness to receive what's already being transmitted. What would your relationship with God look like if you stopped straining to hear a distant voice and instead awakened to the divine whisper that has been speaking within you all along? The first shift begins with a profound recognition that changes everything. The practice of the presence. This isn't about complicated meditation techniques or esoteric rituals. It's about developing a continuous awareness of the divine kingdom that already exists within you. This awareness becomes the foundation for hearing God's voice with remarkable clarity. If these insights about hearing God's voice have resonated with you, subscribe to join our growing community of spiritual seekers. We're exploring practical ways to recognize divine guidance in everyday life. The transformation begins with your first waking moments. Tomorrow morning, before your feet even touch the floor, pause for just a moment and silently acknowledge, "The kingdom of heaven is within me right now. This divine consciousness is my true nature." This tiny decision creates ripples that extend far beyond that moment, establishing a mindset that shapes how you'll respond to everything the day brings. Behind the scenes of every spiritual breakthrough is this fundamental shift in awareness. You're not creating something new, you're recognizing what has always been present. This recognition acts like a tuning fork, adjusting your spiritual frequency to align with divine communication that's already broadcasting within you. The journey toward clearer spiritual hearing continues throughout your day. Whether you're driving to work, sitting in a meeting, or preparing dinner, these ordinary moments become sacred opportunities to practice presence. A brief pause, a quiet breath, a simple acknowledgement, God is speaking within me now. Now, I want to go even deeper into what might be the most overlooked truth on the spiritual path. The hidden insight that most seekers miss is surprisingly simple. Consistency matters infinitely more than intensity. This revelation contradicts much of our cultural programming about spiritual growth, where we're often led to believe that dramatic spiritual experiences are the primary pathway to transformation. The impact of 5 minutes of presence practiced daily will far outweigh occasional hours of desperate spiritual effort. Your spiritual receptors are being fine-tuned through regular, gentle adjustments rather than occasional, intense overhauls. It's the difference between watering a plant daily with a small cup versus drowning it once a month with a fire hose. Throughout your day, especially during challenging moments, take even 30 seconds to return to this inner kingdom. When your boss criticizes your work, when traffic makes you late, when unexpected bills arrive, these are precisely the decision points where this practice reveals its power. Instead of reacting immediately from fear or frustration, pause and recognize the truth that exists beyond material appearances. The mindset shift happens gradually but unmistakably. You'll begin noticing subtle changes at first. A deeper peace in stressful situations, unexpected clarity about persistent problems, a growing sense of divine guidance in daily decisions. These revelations unfold naturally as you consistently return to the awareness that God's voice isn't something you need to search for. It's the very essence of your consciousness. If you've ever experienced even a fleeting moment where God's guidance suddenly became crystal clear amid life's chaos, write in the comments, "I've glimpsed the inner voice." The journey of hearing God's voice more clearly extends beyond dedicated prayer time into every aspect of daily living. Consider one of life's most challenging battlegrounds, your physical health. When symptoms appear, whether minor discomfort or serious diagnosis, our conditioned response typically follows a predictable pattern: panic, followed by exclusively seeking material solutions. This natural reaction often drowns out the very spiritual guidance we need most. The third shift in your daily practice involves approaching health challenges with a transformed mindset. Instead of allowing fear to dominate your consciousness, first turn within to recognize the spiritual truth. In the kingdom of heaven within you, there is only wholeness and divine perfection. This recognition creates a sacred space where God's voice can speak clearly about your well-being. Please understand, this approach isn't about rejecting medical wisdom or practical care. The inner journey I'm describing integrates both spiritual awareness and appropriate action. When facing health concerns, your first decision point becomes pivotal. Will you react from fear or respond from spiritual awareness? Think about someone with chronic pain who's been told they'll simply have to live with their condition. From material consciousness alone, this prognosis feels like a prison sentence. But from kingdom consciousness, they recognize that physical appearance isn't the final reality. Their spiritual essence remains whole regardless of bodily conditions. This recognition creates space for hearing divine guidance that might otherwise be blocked by fear and resignation. Now I want to explore how this same principle transforms another area where anxiety often drowns out God's voice: your financial life. Financial concerns trigger our deepest fears about survival and security, creating so much static that divine guidance becomes nearly impossible to discern. The hidden truth behind financial freedom isn't about the numbers in your bank account, but about the awareness in your consciousness. From kingdom perspective, you recognize that divine substance is infinite and omnipresent. Your experience of supply is primarily a reflection of your consciousness, not external economic conditions. This profound shift allows you to make practical financial decisions from a place of clarity and trust rather than scarcity and panic. When unexpected expenses arise or income decreases, your first response isn't fear, but a return to the awareness that God's voice is speaking guidance even now, in this circumstance. Consider how different your financial journey might be if you approached every money decision as an opportunity to hear divine wisdom rather than a source of anxiety. This doesn't mean ignoring practical budgeting or financial planning. It means bringing a different quality of presence to these activities. The transformation often begins subtly. Perhaps you notice less emotional reactivity when bills arrive or unexpected opportunities for increased income appear. These aren't coincidences, but revelations of what becomes possible when you position yourself to hear God's voice regarding provision. If you've experienced moments where divine guidance provided unexpected solutions to financial challenges, type in the comments, "Provision follows presence." The fourth shift in hearing God's voice more clearly emerges in what might be our most complex arena: relationships. Think about it. Our connections with others often become the very battlegrounds where divine guidance is most difficult to discern. We approach relationships seeking validation, security, or fulfillment from others, creating a dynamic where our spiritual receptors become clouded by emotional needs and expectations. Kingdom consciousness transforms this relational landscape completely. When you recognize the divine presence speaking within yourself, you naturally begin perceiving it in others as well. This shift doesn't magically make relationship challenges disappear, but it provides an entirely different foundation for navigating them. Consider how this plays out in everyday interactions. When your spouse says something hurtful, your immediate impulse might be defensive reaction. But pausing to recognize the kingdom within creates a moment where you can hear guidance beyond the emotional trigger. When a friend disappoints you, the awareness of divine presence provides perspective that transcends the immediate situation. The catalyst for relationship transformation isn't finding perfect people, but developing perfect listening. You begin hearing God's voice speaking through even difficult interactions, revealing insights about yourself and others that would otherwise remain hidden behind emotional reactions. This mindset revolution extends beyond intimate relationships to every human connection. Workplace conflicts, family tensions, even brief encounters with strangers become opportunities to hear divine wisdom rather than obstacles to peace. The blueprint for healthy relationships emerges not from external advice, but from internal guidance that becomes increasingly clear through practice. Now I want to explore what might be the most overlooked accelerator in developing clear spiritual hearing: the power of community. While inner recognition is ultimately a personal journey, seeking spiritual community becomes essential as your awareness deepens. Finding others who understand this practice creates an environment where your receptivity to God's voice can expand exponentially. The hidden dynamic at work here differs fundamentally from conventional social connections. Unlike groups formed around shared interests or activities, authentic spiritual community provides a context where inner recognition is valued, supported, and multiplied through shared experience. When multiple people practice presence together, the collective field of awareness often reveals guidance that might remain obscure to any individual. Think of it as spiritual acoustics. Certain environments naturally amplify sound, while others dampen it. Similarly, some relational contexts naturally enhance your ability to hear divine guidance, while others create interference that makes clarity nearly impossible. The cultivation of spiritual fellowship isn't about religious obligation, but strategic positioning for clearer reception. This doesn't require abandoning existing relationships or joining formal organizations. Sometimes spiritual community forms organically around kitchen tables, in living rooms, or through meaningful conversations, with just one other person who shares your commitment to presence. The essential element isn't the structure, but the shared awareness. If you've experienced moments where divine guidance became clearer through connection with others on a similar spiritual path, share in the comments. Community clarifies guidance. The fifth shift in hearing God's voice clearly transforms one of the most significant portions of your waking hours, your work life. For many people, professional environments represent spiritual dead zones where divine guidance seems particularly difficult to access. The pressure of deadlines, office politics, and performance expectations creates a frequency of anxiety that drowns out the still, small voice within. Kingdom consciousness revolutionizes this dynamic by transforming work from mere employment to spiritual expression. When facing workplace challenges, the simple practice of pausing to recognize the divine reality beyond material appearances creates space for unexpected insight and guidance. A project deadline that once triggered anxiety becomes an opportunity to witness divine ideas emerging in perfect timing. A difficult colleague interaction that would have sparked defensiveness becomes a chance to perceive the kingdom within both yourself and the other person. Subscribe to continue this journey of spiritual discovery with us. Each video translates profound spiritual truths into practical steps you can implement immediately in your daily walk with God. Behind the scenes of truly innovative work is this profound shift in awareness. The most groundbreaking creative solutions rarely emerge from stressed, constricted consciousness. They flow naturally when we access the unlimited intelligence that speaks within kingdom awareness. This isn't abstract philosophy, but practical transformation that affects productivity, problem-solving, and professional fulfillment. Consider how different your work experience might be if you approached each task not as a separate entity struggling through challenges alone, but as a living expression of divine consciousness. You'd approach obstacles from abundance rather than scarcity, from creative possibility rather than limitation, from spiritual partnership rather than isolated struggle. The impact extends far beyond measurable metrics to transform the very quality of your daily experience. Now I want to explore what might be the most significant breakthrough on this journey of hearing God more clearly. As kingdom consciousness matures through consistent practice, you discover something precious beyond measure, an unshakable peace that doesn't depend on circumstances being perfect. This isn't positive thinking or emotional bypassing. It's authentic spiritual awareness that remains steady through life's inevitable fluctuations. The revelation at the heart of this peace is profound. When you position yourself to hear God's voice clearly, what you discover isn't just guidance about specific decisions, but a foundational frequency of tranquility that transcends particular situations. This peace becomes your anchor through every challenge, loss, and disappointment. When financial setbacks occur, you still take practical action, but without the paralysis of fear. When relationships face difficulties, you address them directly, but without the drama of emotional reactivity. When health concerns arise, you seek appropriate care, but without being consumed by worry about outcomes. Divine guidance flows with remarkable clarity when your consciousness isn't clouded by anxiety. A woman who had practiced kingdom consciousness for several years faced the unexpected loss of a spouse. Friends were amazed at her response. Not an absence of grief, but a profound peace that coexisted with natural sorrow. She described knowing, beyond intellectual understanding, that the divine voice that had proven faithful in smaller challenges remained accessible even through life's darkest valley. If you've experienced moments where unexpected peace arrived precisely when you needed divine guidance most, share in the comments. Peace precedes clarity. Now I want to reveal what might be the most challenging aspect of hearing God's voice with greater clarity. The pathway to this transformation requires something that most spiritual seekers in today's world are unwilling to give: consistent commitment, regardless of immediate results. Let's be honest about what this journey truly demands. This isn't a weekend workshop or 21-day challenge that produces instant enlightenment. The breakthrough comes through daily practice, even when you feel absolutely no immediate effects. Faith in spiritual truth when material appearances seem to contradict it completely, and patience through what can be a painfully gradual development process. The hidden dynamic at work here is countercultural in almost every way. Some who begin this practice experience dramatic breakthroughs within weeks or months. Others work diligently for years before significant changes appear visibly in their experience. A few grow impatient and abandon the practice when immediate miracles fail to materialize. The decisive factor isn't spiritual talent or divine favoritism, but simple persistence, the willingness to continue recognizing spiritual truth regardless of apparent results. Think about the most meaningful transformations in your life. Did any of them happen overnight? Real change, the kind that reshapes your entire experience, almost always unfolds through consistent small shifts rather than dramatic singular events. Hearing God's voice with greater clarity follows this same developmental arc. Each recognition creates subtle adjustments in your spiritual receptors, gradually tuning you to divine frequency with increasing precision. The blueprint for success here involves embracing what modern culture rejects entirely: the wisdom of patience. Our society has conditioned us to expect immediate gratification in virtually every domain, from instant downloads to same-day delivery. We bring this same expectation to spiritual practice, wanting instant enlightenment or immediate healing. The revolution that transforms your journey is accepting that spiritual development follows natural laws that cannot be rushed or circumvented. Consider the growth of an oak tree. No amount of impatience, effort, or technique will make an acorn reach its full stature in a month. It follows a developmental timeline encoded in its very nature. Similarly, consciousness unfolds according to its own divine timing. The mindset shift involves aligning your expectations with this natural process rather than imposing artificial timelines based on impatience or comparison with others. This doesn't mean passive waiting, but active participation in the process. Just as a gardener creates optimal conditions for growth without directly forcing the plant to mature faster, your consistent practice creates the perfect environment for spiritual hearing to develop naturally. Every moment you pause to recognize the kingdom within, you're providing essential nourishment for this unfolding awareness. If you're willing to embrace this journey of gradual unfolding, trusting the process even when immediate results aren't apparent, type in the comments, "I choose patient persistence." Now I want to offer perhaps the most liberating truth of this entire journey. You can begin right now, exactly where you are, with whatever understanding you currently possess. The path to hearing God's voice more clearly doesn't require prerequisites or spiritual credentials. You don't need to master complex theology or achieve perfect meditation first. You don't need special training or decades of spiritual study. The kingdom of heaven is within you right now. It has always been there, and it will always be there. This insight contradicts much of our conventional spiritual programming. We've been conditioned to believe that divine communication requires elaborate preparation, special techniques, or advanced spiritual status. The revolutionary understanding that transforms this journey is recognizing that your ability to hear God's voice clearly isn't something you need to create through effort. It's something you simply recognize as already present. Think about the implications of this truth in your daily experience. The blueprint for transformation isn't about adding something new to your life, but removing the barriers to what already exists eternally within your consciousness. Your recognition doesn't create divine guidance, but reveals what has always been speaking beneath the surface of your awareness. The decision point you face in this moment isn't whether to begin an arduous spiritual journey requiring special resources or rare abilities. It's simply whether you'll acknowledge what already exists within you. This acknowledgement can begin with your very next breath, regardless of your current circumstances, spiritual background, or perceived limitations. The practical pathway forward couldn't be simpler. Start today, this very moment, by recognizing as often as you remember, the kingdom of heaven is within me now. Divine presence is my true nature. Spiritual guidance is speaking within my consciousness, regardless of external appearances. This recognition isn't complicated or esoteric. It's a simple return to truth that anyone can practice. The framework for implementation follows natural rhythms of daily life. Practice this recognition in the morning when you first awaken, throughout challenges when clarity seems most elusive, before sleep as you review the day's journey. The consistency of return matters infinitely more than the duration of each recognition. Even 3 seconds of genuine acknowledgement creates space for divine clarity to emerge. The behind-the-scenes reality of this practice involves embracing both progress and setbacks with equal grace. Be patient with yourself through inevitable inconsistency. Some days you'll remember frequently, other days hardly at all. Some recognitions will feel profoundly meaningful, others mechanical and routine. The transformative power works through all of these variations when approached with genuine intention rather than perfectionism. Celebrate small victories along the way, moments when divine guidance suddenly becomes crystal clear, when peace arrives unexpectedly amid chaos, when creative solutions emerge from nowhere. Learn from temporary defeats, times when you forget completely, when emotional reactions override spiritual awareness, when you find yourself operating entirely from material consciousness. If you're ready to begin this simple practice of recognition today, write in the comments, "I recognize the kingdom within." What makes this approach to hearing God's voice so uniquely powerful is that it doesn't require you to become someone different or adopt artificial spiritual behaviors. Unlike many spiritual practices that demand you change your personality, lifestyle, or natural way of being, this recognition simply invites you to embrace who you've always been beneath the surface of material appearances. The transformation paradox at work here is profound. The journey toward clearer spiritual hearing isn't about becoming someone new, but about recognizing your original nature that has always existed. This isn't about adding something foreign to your experience, but removing the layers of conditioning that have muffled divine communication within you. Think about how liberating this truth really is. You don't need to force yourself into uncomfortable spiritual personas or pretend to be someone you're not. The blueprint for authentic spiritual connection has been encoded in your consciousness from the beginning. Every time you turn within to acknowledge this spiritual truth, you're not creating something artificial, You're removing another layer of illusion that has kept you imprisoned in limitation and fear. This recognition works within your unique personality, circumstances, and life path. Whether you're naturally analytical or intuitive, extroverted or introspective, artistically expressive or practically minded, the kingdom consciousness adapts to your authentic self rather than demanding conformity to external spiritual stereotypes. The decision framework for implementation becomes remarkably simple. Allow yourself to be who you truly are. While practicing presence, your natural qualities become channels for divine expression rather than obstacles to be overcome. This integration of spiritual awareness with authentic selfhood creates a sustainable pathway that doesn't require constant effort or pretense. Now I want to reveal what might be the most overlooked dimension of hearing God's voice clearly. The journey of recognition doesn't happen in isolation. It naturally ripples outward and touches countless lives around you. Spiritual. Truth was never meant to be held tightly as intellectual knowledge, but shared openly as lived experience. This sharing doesn't require becoming a teacher or preacher. It happens organically through your transformed presence in everyday relationships and situations. As you practice hearing God's voice more clearly through these 5 daily shifts, you become a living example that quietly inspires others to begin their own practice of recognition. Consider the hidden impact of your spiritual journey on those around you. When you respond to challenges from kingdom awareness rather than reactive fear, you demonstrate a different way of being that others naturally notice. When you make decisions from divine guidance rather than anxiety, you create ripples of transformation that extend far beyond your individual experience. The catalyst for spiritual awakening often isn't elaborate teaching, but simple authenticity. Your willingness to acknowledge the kingdom within becomes permission for others to recognize the same reality in themselves. This multiplication happens without effort or intention. It's the natural result of living from spiritual truth in everyday situations. If you've noticed how your own spiritual practice has subtly influenced others around you, share in the comments. Presence creates ripples. As we draw this conversation to a close, I'm reminded of something profound that spiritual teachers have emphasized throughout the ages. The journey of hearing God's voice clearly isn't meant to be a solitary pursuit, but a shared awakening that ripples through our collective consciousness. If these teachings about recognizing the kingdom within have resonated with something deep inside you today, I'd love to continue this exploration together. Subscribe to join our community of spiritual seekers who are practicing this recognition in their daily lives. Each video explores practical ways to experience divine guidance more clearly through everyday challenges and opportunities. The most beautiful part of this journey is that every person who embraces these practices becomes a living testament to the possibility of deeper spiritual connection. If today's message felt like it was speaking directly to your heart, write in the comments, "The kingdom within awakens." Your story might be exactly what another seeker needs to hear to begin their own practice of recognition. If you found value in these insights about hearing God's voice more clearly, consider tapping that like button, not for algorithms or metrics, but as a quiet acknowledgement that spiritual truth still matters in our distracted world. It's a simple gesture that helps others discover these timeless principles. There's a video right here about maintaining spiritual awareness through challenging circumstances that builds beautifully on what we've discussed today. Click and continue with me over there as we explore how to sustain divine connection even when external conditions seem to contradict spiritual truth. Until next time, remember that the kingdom of heaven is within you right now, waiting only for your recognition.